talk to me about the invention of sound. I mean, do you know how this is going to end? And did you change in writing the book?
Oh my gosh. I thought that was just going to be a quick and dirty novel about a guy whose kid disappeared 17 years ago. And and I knew that by the third act, he was going to hear her scream dubbed into a really bad horror movie. And it was going to start a discovery process. And he was going to track down the people who had kidnapped and killed her and get me Mel Gibson on the phone. It was just going to be one of those Liam Neeson thriller movies. And and then it went nuts in the third act, and it had that fantastic plot reveal about the huge conspiracy, and it had this. It went global with the whole purpose for why those screams were being collected, and it completely surprised me. And that's why I write. Is the third act is always just a complete revelation. I have no idea that Tyler is going to be the narrator. I have no idea that the story is going to go where it eventually goes. And that is so much the joy of doing this thing.
Does it always happen? Or does it always happen with the good ones?
It always happens, but sometimes it takes longer, and you have to be with a kind of longer pregnancy, because when you're waiting for it to happen, you are really miserable because you are so sure it's not going to happen. And you so want to rush things to conclusion. You just want to slap an ending on this thing and send it out and let it be a shitty book in the world. Good enough. But Tom always taught that the longer you can be with the incomplete thing and allow the thing to complete itself, the better the thing will be. And so it's not about getting the baby out. It's about letting the baby take as much time as the baby needs. And then the baby will be its own thing.
And for you, how long can that be? Years? You don't sit on things for 5 or 10 years, though, or do you?
Only short stories.
Okay. The shorter.
Oh my gosh, they're short. I wrote a short story called Zombies. I'd had this idea about what about a kind of cluster of kids in high school who used cardiac defibrillators, and they stuck one electrode on one side of the forehead and one electrode on the other temple. And they pressed that big red button, and they put a huge jolt of current right through their frontal lobe. And they did that as a kind of way of lobotomizing themselves because they were so frightened of the future. And after that, they were more or less zombies who were completely happy with their circumstances, and they no longer worried or aspired to anything. And that's a story that tends to make young people cry, because it's all about that terror that you feel in your late 20s and in your 30s when the world expects you to accomplish all of your major life things. Set up a home, set up a career, set up a family, find a mate. You really, and launch from your originating family. You're under so much pressure during that time. And we forget the terror of it. Anyway, I told the concept to my trainer, and it wasn't 4 or 5 years later that this trainer said, you had that story about the kids with the defibrillator. Did you ever do anything with it? And I thought, God bless you, Chris, because I had all but forgotten that story idea. And I thought, if Chris D'Amato remembered that premise for 6 years, then that's a good story idea. And so often you come up with an idea and it really has to cook for 6, 7, 8, or 10 years, especially the short stories. They just have to cook in your subconscious for a long time before you can really do something with them.
And the short stories demand more sometimes than the long form content because they're like a meme. They have to work or not work.
And they have to have their own language, because with a short story, you can really burn the language. You can really distort and warp the language as if you were a lyricist. because, the songs work because they completely distort the language. And they also work because they only last 3 or 4 minutes. So the trick is with a short story is that you can really push the language and not worry about completely burning out the reader. You don't want to push the language that hard for 300 pages.